Think about last night for a second. You got into bed, you lay down, you closed your eyes, and then you woke up this morning. Somewhere in between those two moments, 8 hours just vanished. Not foggy, not blurry, just completely gone, like someone walked in and deleted the file. There's no slow fade where the memories get hazier and hazier. 1 second you're lying there thinking something completely random, like why hot dogs come in packs of 10 but buns come in packs of 8, and somebody at the factory clearly hates us, and then nothing. Cut to black. Morning. You have zero memory of the actual moment it happened. You don't remember your last thought before your brain clocked out. You don't remember your eyes getting heavy for the final time. You don't remember crossing the line between awake and not awake. Why is that? This sounds like one of those dumb questions you ask at 3 in the morning until you actually sit with it for a second and realize it's genuinely unsettling. You spend roughly 1/3 of your entire life asleep. That means you've fallen asleep tens of thousands of times by now. You'd think, after that many reps, you'd at least have a vague idea what it feels like. Nope. Every single night, it happens completely without a trace. No goodbye, no warning, no final thought you can actually hold on to. Just gone. The answer takes us into some genuinely strange corners of neuroscience. And once you understand what your brain is actually doing in those final minutes before lights out, the mystery doesn't shrink, it gets weirder. Let's start with what's physically happening inside your skull as you fall asleep, because it's way more dramatic than people give it credit for. All day long, every waking hour, your brain is burning energy. And as a byproduct of that, it produces a chemical called adenosine. Adenosine builds up slowly and continuously from the second you wake up, accumulating in your brain like a bar tab you're legally not allowed to close until bedtime. The longer you're awake, the more it piles up. And adenosine doesn't just sit there quietly being chemically polite. It actively shuts down your brain's alertness systems, making you feel heavier, foggier, and more desperate to lie down with each passing hour. That's why you feel exhausted by the end of a long day. And here's a fun side fact. This is also exactly why caffeine works. Coffee blocks your adenosine receptors, so your brain physically cannot read the "you are extremely tired" signal anymore. You're not actually getting more energy from coffee. You're just temporarily disconnecting the wire that tells your brain how tired you already are, which is a fun thing to think about while you're on your 4th cup, white-knuckling your way through a meeting, insisting you're totally fine. At the same time as the adenosine buildup, your circadian rhythm, your internal 24-hour clock, run by a tiny region in your hypothalamus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, starts dialing down its alertness signals as night creeps in. Your pineal gland releases melatonin. Your body temperature drops slightly. The entire chemistry of your brain quietly tips away from awake and toward asleep. And then, when the conditions line up, a kind of neurological switch flips. Neurons in a region called the ventrolateral preoptic nucleus, a small cluster of cells in the hypothalamus, start actively shutting down the systems that keep you awake. They quiet the chemicals pumping through your brain to maintain alertness. Basically, your brain talks itself off the ledge of being awake. And somewhere during this whole chemical negotiation, something critical happens to your thalamus. This is where the memory mystery actually starts making sense. Under normal waking conditions, your thalamus is your brain's relay station. Everything you see, hear, feel, and sense passes through it on the way to your cortex. It's the reason you can hear a sound and consciously register, "Oh, that's a sound." It's why you can feel your sheets against your skin and know that's specifically what you're feeling. It's constantly forwarding the outside world to the part of your brain that actually experiences things. When you fall asleep, the thalamus basically shuts the gate. a structure called the reticular thalamic nucleus starts blocking the thalamus's relay cells, gradually cutting off the flow of sensory information to your cortex. Your phone buzzing across the room, a car driving past, the hum of the air conditioner, none of it gets forwarded upstairs anymore. Your cortex, the part of your brain responsible for conscious experience and forming memories, starts getting completely starved of input. And without input, it simply cannot form new memories in any coherent way. Honestly, that's most of the answer right there. You can't remember falling asleep because the actual process of falling asleep is your brain actively dismantling its own ability to record what's happening. The thalamus stops relaying, the cortex goes quiet, the memory recording machinery shuts itself down before you're even fully unconscious. So those last few minutes of being awake are spent inside a brain that's getting progressively, rapidly worse at actually logging any of it. It's like trying to film a video on a phone whose battery is dying in real time. The last few seconds of footage are either corrupted or simply never make it to the file. Not because nothing was happening, because the recording equipment quit early. But here's where it gets stranger, because your brain doesn't just politely fade to silence. There's an entire phase, probably the most underrated, genuinely bizarre experience every single human goes through every single night, and most people have absolutely no clue it's even happening to them. It's called hypnagogia. Hypnagogia is the transitional zone between being awake and being asleep. Technically, it's stage 1 sleep. This window can last anywhere from a few seconds to several minutes, and during it, your brain is doing something deeply weird. Your cortex isn't fully asleep yet. Your thalamus is starting to close the gate but hasn't slammed it shut completely. And in that strange in-between zone, your brain starts producing spontaneous, completely involuntary sensory experiences. Basically, hallucinations. Although that word makes it sound scarier than it actually is. So what do these hypnagogic experiences actually look like? Researchers who've woken people up mid-phase report things like geometric shapes drifting through their vision, sudden flashes of random faces or places, the sound of their name being called out of nowhere, fragments of music nobody's actually playing, and the absolute classic, the sudden sensation of falling, immediately followed by a violent full-body jerk that snaps you straight back to alertness. That jerk has a name. It's called a hypnic jerk, or a sleep start, and somewhere between 60 and 70% of people experience it regularly. You know the one. You're drifting off peacefully, and suddenly you're plummeting off a ledge that does not exist. Your entire body convulses like you got hit with a tiny bolt of lightning, and your partner sits up asking what on earth is wrong with you. There's no single agreed-upon scientific explanation for why hypnic jerks happen, but one popular theory is that your brain misreads the sudden muscle relaxation of falling asleep as actual physical falling, and panics, firing off an emergency correction signal to every muscle group telling them to catch yourself immediately. True or not, the body's response is instant and deeply, profoundly undignified. During this phase, the visual parts of your cortex stay weirdly active, generating vivid imagery with zero actual visual input behind it. Your temporal lobes, which handle sound processing, light up too, which might explain why people sometimes hear words or sounds that were never actually there. But here's the genuinely wild part. Most people wake up the next morning with absolutely zero memory of any of this. Not because it didn't happen. It absolutely happened. It's because your brain's memory recording system was already in the process of shutting down while it was occurring. Your hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for converting experiences into long-term memories, is in a transitional, half-offline state during hypnagogia. Some research even suggests this stage is associated with increased forgetting rather than memory formation. So to recap, you lived through a genuine hallucination, possibly complete with a geometric light show and a dramatic fake plummet through space, and you remember absolutely none of it. every single night, without exception. Here's what makes this even harder to wrap your head around. Falling asleep isn't a clean, sharp line between awake and asleep. It's messy and gradual, and different parts of your brain don't cross that line at the same time. Sleep researchers describe sleep onset as a regional phenomenon. Different areas of your cortex can slip into something resembling sleep, while other areas are still wide awake. That's why, if you've ever caught yourself nodding off somewhere deeply embarrassing, a lecture hall, an endless work meeting, that one cousin's 3-hour wedding speech, you sometimes have this vague, ghostly impression of something happening right before you jolted back awake. Your motor cortex might have still been alert while your prefrontal cortex had already left the building. Your auditory areas might still be picking up sound while your frontal regions had already checked out completely. The result is that the exact moment of falling asleep, the specific moment you'd actually need to remember in order to remember falling asleep, isn't really a single moment at all. It's a slow, region-by-region shutdown. By the time the parts of your brain responsible for memory and self-awareness go offline, the parts responsible for recording that exact transition have already stopped working. The observer is the last thing to go, and it goes out before it manages to write anything down. It's a bit like trying to film yourself falling asleep by holding the camera yourself. Eventually, your hand relaxes, the camera tips over, and the final few frames are just the ceiling spinning away as it hits the floor. Whatever happened in those last moments never got captured cleanly, and frankly, the camera definitely wasn't even rolling by the time things went still. Now add another layer onto all of this. Sleep itself doesn't particularly want you holding on to the experience of falling asleep in the first place. Sleep is, among other things, a memory consolidation process. Overnight, your brain selectively strengthens certain memories from the day while quietly discarding others. It's doing maintenance, keeping what seems useful, pruning what doesn't, and research shows this process is extremely picky. Sleep doesn't blindly reinforce everything that happened to you that day, and the experience of transitioning into sleep itself, the dim, drowsy, fading final minutes of being conscious, from your brain's perspective, is probably nowhere near the top of the worth-keeping list. There's no useful information in it, no emotional weight, no survival value whatsoever. It's just the sensation of lying in the dark, getting progressively blurrier. Your brain is a brutally practical editor, and across the entire human species, every single night in recorded history, it has collectively decided that the experience of falling asleep belongs on the cutting room floor. Meanwhile, your hippocampus, remember, the key memory-forming structure, actually shows some interesting activity during this transition, including what researchers think might be a kind of rapid memory sorting process. But these aren't new memories being formed. These might be recent memories getting tagged, sorted, and evaluated. Your hippocampus during sleep onset is basically the overnight editor scrolling through the day's footage, deciding what makes the final cut. And the act of editing itself never makes it into the movie. There's also a genuinely strange philosophical layer to all of this, worth sitting with for a second. The fact that you can't remember falling asleep means there's a regular, nightly gap in your conscious experience that you are completely unaware of. You experience yourself as one continuous being, living through one connected thread of consciousness from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to bed. But that thread breaks every single night, and you never notice, because the part of you that would notice the break is the exact same part of you that's currently offline. You are not present for roughly 8 out of every 24 hours, and you have zero felt sense of that absence, because feeling the absence of consciousness would itself require, well, consciousness. The ancient Greeks were apparently onto this. Aristotle described sleep as a state somewhere between living and not living. The Greeks associated sleep with the god Hypnos and his twin brother, Thanatos, the god of death. Not because they thought sleep was dangerous, but because there was something philosophically uncomfortable about the nightly disappearance of the self. You go to sleep, and in some real sense, you stop. And then something claiming to be you picks up exactly where you left off in the morning, with no direct memory of the gap whatsoever. We're mostly fine with this, because we wake up feeling like the same person, memories intact, personality unchanged. The sense of continuity feels solid, even though there's a literal discontinuity baked into every single night of your life. But the feeling of continuity and the fact of continuity aren't quite the same thing, and the question of what exactly survives through sleep is one of those topics that sounds like philosophy homework right up until you've had way too much caffeine, possibly borrowed against your future tired self, and you're lying in bed at 2 a.m. actually thinking about it. So why can't you remember falling asleep? Because your brain starts shutting down its own recording equipment before it even goes fully offline. Your thalamus closes the gate on incoming sensory information, cutting off the data stream your cortex needs to build conscious experience and memory. Your hippocampus shifts away from forming new long-term memories and starts its nightly maintenance shift instead. Your prefrontal cortex, the part most responsible for self-awareness, for the sense of being a coherent self, watching your own experience, is among the very first regions to go dark. And by the time all of that is happening, there is no version of you left awake enough to notice any of it. Between your last clear memory and your alarm going off, there was an entire transitional event happening. The thalamic gate slamming shut, the hypnagogic hallucinations with their geometric shapes and phantom sounds, probably at least one dramatic hypnic jerk, the slow region-by-region shutdown of your cortex, a full neurological performance happening with zero audience, because the audience and the performer were the exact same person currently falling asleep. Every night, you basically vanish, and you're completely fine with it, because you always come back. Your brain decided a long time ago that this was a perfectly reasonable trade. 8 hours of complete absence in exchange for getting a repaired, consolidated, fully functional version of yourself back the next morning. Memory of the actual transition simply wasn't included in the deal, and honestly, given how genuinely strange that transition is, the geometric hallucinations, the phantom ledge you keep falling off, the slow regional shutdown of your own consciousness, it's probably for the best that you don't remember any of it. You'd never get a decent night's sleep again.